We have on the line here today Mr. Bob Dorough, Music Director of Schoolhouse Rock. Bob, welcome to the potentialofmusic.com podcast.
Well, thank you, Craig.
Bob, just wanted to first start off with this. Since I was raised on Schoolhouse Rock, I was born in '64 and grew up in the '70s watching that series, and 30 years later had a son and thought those archives were lost, and for that to come back on VHS and DVD and be able to share those fond memories with my son, I just wanted to thank you first and foremost for your contribution to that series. But tell me about the concept and the genesis, Bob, when you got started with Schoolhouse Rock, how you approached and how it came about.
Well, it all came about because of a wonderful advertising gentleman named David B. McCall.
Right.
He wanted, because his own sons were having trouble with the multiplication table.
Right.
His idea was to put it to music, which he called rock music.
Right.
And I think he tried several Broadway jingle composers because he knew those jingle composers.
Right.
In the advertising business, and none of them really fulfilled his wish properly. So finally, through the jazz circles, I met George Newell, who was a jazz player and a fan, and also a genius advertising man in that office.
Right.
He brought me to David McCall, and I was given the assignment to make multiplication rock.
Right.
It was going to be a phonograph record, you know. It wasn't even, we weren't thinking TV at all.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I guess Tom Yohe was the late great animator that worked with you guys, correct?
Yeah, he was also in that office. So anyway, I went home and I knew it was a serious commission, and I'd never had anything like it. And besides, I like children. It was a chance to communicate with children. So
right.
I wrote 3 as a magic number, and they dug it so much that they said, write some more, and they started providing the money for me to record them properly.
Right.
And we actually made a phonograph record, audio record, and it was tested in the Bank Street College of Education.
Okay.
To prove that it not only entertained the kids, but it also instructed them in the multiplication process.
Right. And Bob, I guess not all listeners may not know that you had a great distinguished career as a jazz songwriter, but had you ever written for any kind of children's music before?
Oh, I'd written a few little ditties, you know, for my friends' children.
Right.
And things like that, but I never had an outlet. And I often thought, I could make a children's record, but
right.
I'd never had the opportunity, or I never took the bull by the horns until this came along.
Right. And tell me, Bob, what was your approach? You sit down at the piano to write songs for children. Tell me how that differed from, say, writing I'm Hip or one of those songs. What were you thinking about when you started writing music for kids?
Well, of course, I knew I had to give them the math.
Right.
And at the same time, I didn't want to bore them stiff. And
right.
And another thing that I was highly preoccupied with was the monotony of the multiplication tables.
Right.
As far as rhythm goes.
Right.
I mean, you don't get many rhythm patterns in it. It's pretty much the same beat all the way. And
right.
I got to get around that someday, some way. So 3 is a magic number. Sort of starts at the back door about why is 3 a magic number, and then later on I count and multiply by 3.
Right.
But I think that obtuse tangential approach is what got Mr. McCall interested in me, and well, it went on, and then Tom Yohe started doodling drawings to go with the songs, and the first thing he knew, we were in television.
Right. And, Bob, I know you brought along several of your jazz colleagues, Blossom Dearie and Jack Sheldon and Grady Tate and Dave Frischberg and so on. And all of you folks had really a very distinctive styles and vocal attributes, I guess, and that's one of the things that really makes it memorable. There must have been such a great sense of camaraderie. Tell me what it was like when you guys got in the recording studio to put this together.
Well, it was really great because we always had the leisure of doing one song per session.
Right.
You know, when you do TV, film music, you're allowed to do 15 minutes of music in a 3-hour session. But I was doing 3 minutes of music each. Only one time did we do 2 songs in one day instead of one.
Right.
But it was just the opportunity to hire musicians that I liked and admired, and as you say, the jazz collaborators like the other singers. All that, so it was a great time, really.
Yeah. And Bob, tell me, I know that you guys have really, the special part of this series was you guys really tapped into the power of music as a memory retention tool. I think that's why it was so magical. And of course, you see that effect in radio and TV jingles and so on. And you put that to very constructive use in this series. As you've traveled and performed, I know you've done some seminars and so on and discussed these songs. What do other educators tell you about the way they use these songs, and have they brought them into the classroom, or what are they finding with the series?
Oh, many school teachers adore me.
I'll bet.
And I get compliments like the one you gave me at the beginning of this bit.
Right.
And the kids, they grew up with it, and they became teachers themselves.
Right.
And parents who pass it on to their children.
Right.
And it's just, it's really a good educational tool.
Right.
I was a lucky man to be around in the right place at the right time, I think.
Sure. Well, I guess like they say, luck is when opportunity meets preparation, right?
Yeah, right. I was ready.
And Bob, have you heard of any other organizational or innovative educators that are carrying the torch forward? In other words, people who said, I really learned a lesson from Schoolhouse Rock, and I'm using music as a memory retention type tool in education and taking on other things maybe that Schoolhouse Rock didn't cover. What are you finding that's, I guess, new and innovative along the same lines of Schoolhouse Rock?
I think a lot of younger people are, in fact, applying the principle of that kind of teaching, and they're writing new stuff. Unfortunately, I don't know the full extent of it, but
right.
Young people tell me all the time that they're writing songs for their own class.
Right.
Yeah, and it was a great stimulus, I'm sure, in the educational field.
Right. And when you guys conduct seminars, Bob, what are the questions that people want to know about the series, and what are the type of things that surprise you, I guess, when the audience comes up to you and asks you questions?
Sometimes it's stupid, like, what's your favorite song? And, I usually say, well, the first one has to be my favorite because it got me the job, more or less. 3 is a magic number, but I also am very proud of Junction because
sure.
I think everybody in the country knows it.
Yeah, and I think you did that on your live CD at the Iridium, correct?
Right. They say if you go down the street and you say, Junction, somebody will say, what's your function?
That's right.
It's a real catchword.
Yeah, I was in front of a group of 4th graders last year and asked them if they knew who Bob Dorough was, and none of them knew. Then I sang Junction, they all sang along. So you've done something special.
It's a real baiter.
Yeah, that's it.
And George gave me the idea for that title, so I owe a lot to George because he's a great musician as well as an advertising man. Well,
tell me a little bit more about George then, Bob, and tell me, his background was half music and half advertising. How did he get into the...
Yeah, I think he actually majored in composition.
Okay.
In Florida State, and he probably saw that it was going to be a tough life, so he had a good knowledge of English language, and also he had that particular knack for communicating, so he became quite a genius in the advertising world.
Right.
And but to this day, he still jams and plays the piano and is ready to play, at anybody's party or anything like that. He's really a great musician.